Hi, I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. And welcome to episode 169. Is it okay to use ChatGPT for scholarly writing? The word okay, I want us to envision in quotation marks. There's not really a good way to do this if you're audio only. And why I started thinking about this topic is not just because ChatGPT is everywhere, and we're all starting to either hear about it or explore our own writing with it with our students, maybe in a class. But it's more that many of our clients are starting to ask this question, and what they mean by it is, am I cheating if I'm using ChatGPT to do some of my scholarly writing? Am I somehow circumventing this process of finishing a monograph, doing a dissertation? Am I not putting in the hard intellectual work of scholarly writing when I lean on a tool like that? And it's a complex question. So I don't think there's an easy answer for me to say, no, it's not okay, or yep, it's perfectly fine. Because with all things, I think this answer is nuanced. It's probably going to continue to develop as a nuanced answer, specifically in the scholarly writing community, because so much of the work that we do, a lot of the I don't want to say prestige, but that's the best word that's coming to mind right now. A lot of the value or the prestige in some of our work is that, we are an individual scholar. We have this great thought. It's now published. It's out in the world. Other people are citing it because it's so great. And, these publications are the academic currency. So when we hear about things like, for example, predatory journals and how, if you pay and get something published in one of these journals, that's not as good because it's cheating. It's going around the system. And I think a lot of people that are coming to us as clients are coming with this question that, if I use something like this, it feels like, it feels dirty. It feels like I'm cheating. And so I wanted to explore this on a couple of levels and then throw out something that we're doing as a resource to try to figure out some of these questions. Well, one of the things that we often will say with our clients when we start talking about it is, what do you want it to do for you? I mean, this is a good question with any tool, but there's a big difference, for example, in having ChatGPT or any of these other generative AI tools write something for you from scratch. So, of course, I've already seen a student essay that's been written by AI, and I have to say it was pretty impressive. I knew it wasn't the students for lots of reasons, namely that we write in class, so I knew that this didn't belong to the student. But I think there's that level, and then there's other times where maybe you ask a generative AI tool. It doesn't have to be ChatGPT, but you ask it to streamline your wording. So maybe you have a paragraph that's 1,000 words, and you could ask it, please, see if you can cut this down to 800 words without losing the original intent of the sentences. To me, those are two totally different things. There's a lot of ways that you might end up using it. So one of the ways that we go about it with clients is, what do you want to use it for? And even then, how does using it actually make you feel? Because, in some ways, you could use these generative AI tools almost in the way that we've been using like grammar check or spell check or things like that are now already built into our scholarly writing processes for the most part. But, at some level, here would be another example. Probably this is not even a great one, but it's one that I see all the time. We have a heck of a lot of people who still like doing an APA or an MLA or a Chicago works cited references bibliography page from scratch without using, say, EndNote or a citation generator or Zotero or something like that. And then we have other people that are shocked that you would put in that kind of labor to make the entries. For the record, I can be persuaded in both ways, because some of the things I'm actually taking the citations from, say, a library database where it will automatically make you one in APA, and I'm just copying and pasting. So I'm kind of between the two as a writer myself. But the generative AI discussion, I know, is not totally the same thing, but it's sort of like, are you skirting the academic labor in writing? For some people, they would say, why would you spell check by hand? You're never going to catch everything. Why would you make your references page by hand? How are you going to remember where all those commas and parentheses go? And what did APA do this time in their latest update? How are you going to even remember any of that stuff? We may get to a point with things with ChatGPT or generative AI, any of the other tools, it becomes very natural in the way that some of the support functions. But I think the bigger question is, what happens to our scholarly voice? Is it gone when we have some of these AI tools helping us? Are we really writing anymore? I mean, that was probably one of the same questions when we got to things like a grammar check. So here's how we're exploring this, because this is something, obviously, we are, if you haven't heard about us, you're just joining us on the podcast. We are an organization that's formed of PhDs in writing studies or those with advanced credentials in writing. And so all of us are used to supporting scholarly writing as writing program administrators, writing center directors. We teach in English departments or writing departments. I direct a graduate program in writing studies. And so we not only teach writing at all multiple levels, but we also research it and how it works. And so this is a question many of us are researching. So it's definitely something of interest to us. And, answering if something's right or wrong, of course, it certainly depends on the person, but I think it also depends on the use. And so what we're going to do about this, because we've had a lot of calls, can you address this on a podcast? Can you say, basically people want to know, like, what are the rules for using it? I can't promise you that. I cannot make rules in the way, that maybe I would use it or somebody else would use it. But what we can do, and what we are doing, is in April, and I will pop this up on the screen for people that might be watching this on YouTube. But in April, our workshop for that month is going to be on using generative AI to support and assess your scholarly writing. So we're going to be doing that on Thursday, April 18th at noon Eastern. As with all of our workshops, you can register and just get the recording, since I know we have listeners from all over the world. And, what is going to happen in this particular workshop is a look at how you might use it in a couple of different ways. This particular workshop is going to be facilitated by Dr. James Purdy out of Duquesne University. He's one of our coaches and has a lot of experience with looking at some of these things. And so one of the things that he's going to do is really talk about what role we want AI to play for us when we're trying to do something with our scholarly writing, and we want to see if AI can help us. And so what he's going to do is guide us through how you can train it and use it to follow 4 roles that we're very familiar with as scholarly writers. So one would be a coach, maybe when we're helping somebody else. One would be an editor, one a grader, and then the last one would be a peer reviewer. So in all of these aspects, you can actually have it do different things for you. For example, if you want it to be an editor, because you want to have the tool kind of take a last pass at maybe a chunk of a manuscript or a section or something like that, that's a very different role than a peer reviewer. A peer reviewer would probably provide more formative feedback or some different things that actually, it's actually feedback to help develop the piece to completion. An editor might be looking at a completed piece. So we're going to look at all of those. A couple of things that if you decide you do want to join us for that one, you will get a couple of things, including practice with the tool itself. So one of the things that we're trying to do more in our workshops is have you actually practice with the thing you're coming to learn about, because we can all register for a workshop and then sit there and just kind of watch the screen, but be doing other kinds of things. Many of us like multitasking when we're watching some of these, but for this one, I think it'd be really helpful to actually have a piece of your writing open and be ready to practice with the tool, because this way you could actually drop in a chunk of your writing, see what it does, ask questions from Jim, and see what happens. How can you actually tweak it to give you something helpful? And then more importantly, there would be 2 other benefits, I think, to this. One would be, once you get some feedback from AI, what do you do with it? How do you use it to revise your writing? Do you use it more in a way that you might craft, say, a letter of submission when you submit an article, because now you know some things that are in the writing? Maybe that's a way you're going to use it. So that would be one thing. But the other thing would be more just some general wording strategies for inputs. So when we actually type in, say, directions to any kind of generative AI as always, whatever you put in is going to lead to whatever you get out. So one of the things that would be a benefit of attending something like this would be looking at those kind of outputs. So hopefully you can join us for that one. As always, if you listen to this recording or the podcast, 2 years later, and you're like, wow, I wish I would have heard that, you can always come back to us for any of our old workshops. They're all on Eventbrite, Defend, Publish, and Lead. If you click the past tab, you can see them. And if you're interested in registering late for a workshop, you can definitely still get the recording and the templates and things like that. One other thing I wanted to share in this particular episode that also focuses on AI would be our partnership with the Textbook and Academic Authors Association. I know I've mentioned this on many other podcasts, but we don't have a lot of sponsors. I don't like commercials. I only like sponsors that actually are things that I use. So TAA is a membership I always have, and I definitely really like this organization because to me, it is the only one that I know of that really focuses on the nuts and bolts of scholarly writing, but not from a limited lens. So there's tons of scholarly publishing conferences. I go to some of those. A little shout out to Researcher to Reader in London. I totally missed that one this year. I was so sad I was not able to go. That is my absolute favorite one. I'll put a link to that one in the show notes because I really like that one. Just as a side note, it is a focus on the scholarly publishing life cycle, which I find really interesting if somebody interested in faculty productivity. So I love that one. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. But for Textbook and Academic Authors Association, why I really like this is that it brings together all kinds of people, the scholarly writers themselves, people that publish textbooks, industry professionals that support scholarly writing, writing coaching practices. So like myself, I do occasional workshops and things like that for TAA. So this is something that if you're interested in doing, they are having their annual conference. And one of the benefits, I think, to signing up for this type of a conference, if you go to their conference webpage, I will put it in there. But there's also, it's in Nashville. I had a couple of people ask, where would you go for this? It's a shorter conference. It's just 2 days. Definitely is something that I think is really helpful. And this particular week, and I'll highlight some other things about this organization as they're one of our sponsors, but we do have maybe 5 to 10% of our clients working on textbooks at the moment. There's not a lot of organizations that support textbook writing. So either you get into the textbook game early on or you don't get into it, or perhaps maybe a publisher might approach you like, hey, have you ever written a textbook for that course? A lot of times that's the way that it happens. But I know for people that are doing textbooks, many of whom have come to us because there isn't a lot of support out there. TAA is one of the only organizations that regularly offers workshops, programming, resources, like how do you negotiate royalties for a textbook, which might be different than a scholarly monograph. So I encourage you to check out TAA. I'll put a link in the show notes, but they got a very easy web address. It's just taa.org. And if you want to check out their conference, it is in June. So happy writing this week. If you have questions about the AI workshop, I'm always happy to address those because I know that sometimes people ask us questions prior to registration. If you have any of those, you can email me at Christine@defendpublishlead.com or just fill out a questionnaire or an interest form on the homepage of defendpublishlead.com. Happy writing this week.